Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today we are going to cover the ICH Q1 in detail. My name is Simon. I'm currently a working professional. I did my masters in pharmaceutical analysis. So without wasting further time, let's get started. So these are the topics that I am going to cover today in this video. You can pause it anytime and take a look at the contents. Okay, so before we go ahead more in the video, I highly recommend that you take a pen and paper and note it down the points that I am going to discuss here in this video. This is very important from an interview point of view and also if you come here just for the revision purpose. So let's start. So let's quickly recap the purposes of stability studies. There are mainly three purposes. The first one, obviously, the stability studies give evidence to the regulatory agencies that your drug substance or product is stable over time under the influence of temperature, humidity, and light. The second one, it helps to establish the retest period for a drug substance and a shelf life for a drug product. And finally, it helps to establish the recommended storage condition. Now, if you are not sure what is a drug substance and what is a drug product, I have made a detailed video on this. The link you can find on the I button as well as in the description below. Please go ahead and check that out. Now we'll discuss about the ICH stability zones, and it is one of the most important slide of today's presentation. So the globe has been divided into four climate zones based on the mean kinetic temperature. So the zone 1 basically temperate zone, zone 2 is Mediterranean zone, zone 3 is a hot and dry zone, zone 4A hot humid zone, and zone 4B hot very humid zone. Now a very important point to note here that the zones has been divided based on the mean kinetic temperature. So a mean kinetic temperature in a simple language, it is nothing but a temperature which is very close to mean temperature for that particular region. Now, if I have to give you an example of this, take example of India. Now, in India, in summer, there are regions where the temperature this goes above 45 degrees centigrade, and in winter there are places where the temperature falls below 10 degrees centigrade. So it is not constant. The temperature it varies over time around the year. But now if you see the mean kinetic temperature for the zone 4B, it is 3075. That means that if you keep your samples in this 30-75 degrees condition over a long period of time, it is going to have the same thermal challenge as would have been experienced over a range of both higher and lower temperature. So this is basically a mean kinetic temperature. Now let's look at the map illustrations of ICH zone. So there is a global map you can see on the screen. The upper regions of the map, which is blue in color, shows the ICH zone 1. Now the regions below that which is in green color shows the zone 2 regions, and below that the orange color one shows the zone 3, followed by the red color regions which shows the ICH zone 4. Now let's look at the regulatory requirements for drug substance and products intended to be stored at room temperature. So as I have mentioned in my last video, there are basically three kinds of stability studies: long-term, intermediate, and accelerated. So in general case where you are going to store your product in the room temperature, the long-term testing condition would be 25 degrees centigrade and 60% RH plus minus 5% RH, or you can do it at 30 degree followed by 65% RH. If you're going for intermediate, it would be 30-65, and if you're going for accelerated study, it would be 40 degrees centigrade plus minus 2 followed by 70% relative humidity plus minus 5% relative humidity. Now, one thing that you have to keep in mind is that whenever you are submitting your dossier, a minimum of 12-month long-term data has to be submitted along with a 6-month accelerated data. And in case if you are submitting intermediate data, a 6th month data, intermediate stability study data has to be submitted. This is the minimum requirement. Without this, your dossier won't be accepted for review. Now, if you look at the testing frequencies, this is one of the very important slide. Let's go one by one. So for the long-term stability studies, For the first year, the testing frequencies would be 3 months interval. That means 0 month, 3 months, 6 month, 9 month, followed by 12 month. For the second year, it will be 6 month interval. That means 18 followed by 24. And after that, it would be annual. That means 36. Accelerated stability study, it should be done for 6 months with a 3 months interval. That means 0, 3 and 6. And for the intermediate stability study, it has to be given for 1 year and a minimum of 4 time points, that is 0, 6, 9 and 12. Now there are certain points regarding the stability study which are very important and you should know this from an interview point of view. Let's look at those. So the first point would be the ICH Q1A is applicable for Zone 1 and Zone 2. That means for the countries which belongs to Zone 3 and Zone 4, their long-term testing condition would be different and it would be based on their mean kinetic temperature. Now for the countries belongs to Zone 1 and Zone 2, it is left to the applicant whether to go for 2560 or 3065 as a long-term condition. Generally, the regulatory agencies, they don't have any problem if you're going to conduct your long-term studies in 3065. The reason being the fact that 3065 is generally more harsher than 2560. Now, if you're conducting your long-term studies in 2560 and there is a significant change occur within the first 6 months of your accelerated testing, then only you need to submit your intermediate testing data. Otherwise, there is no need for submitting intermediate testing data. And finally, if you're going to perform your long-term in 3065, there is no need for, there is no intermediate condition in short. Now, what I meant by significant change, is it same for drug substance or drug product? Let's discuss that one. Now, the definition of significant change is different for drug substance as well as drug product. For example, in case of drug substance, failure to meet any of the test parameter to its specification can be considered as a significant change. But for drug product, it is different. There is a long list of changes which can be considered as a significant change. For example, the first one would be if there is any change in the assay value, 5% change in the assay value from its initial value, that can be considered as a significant change. For example, if in the initial value, assay value is 98% and after 1 year the assay value is 92%, then it is more than 5%, then it would be considered as a significant change. Coming to the second point, if there is any degradation product which has exceeded its acceptance criteria, then it will be considered as a significant change. Followed by if there is any physical changes, for example, in terms of color, phase separation, resuspendability, caking, hardness, dose delivery per actuation, that would be considered as a significant change. Fourth one, failure to pH would be considered as a significant change. And finally, the failure of the acceptance criteria for dissolution for 12 units would be considered as a significant change. Now, is there any change which would not be considered as a significance? Yes, there are certain changes. For example, the changes which are very normal. For example, the softening of suppository at 37 degrees centigrade, it would not be considered as a significant change. And if there is a cross-linking of gelatin capsule in the dissolution and that is why the dissolution fails, that would not be considered as a significant change. Now I have a homework for you. Please let me know in the comments below for which kind of drug products the 5% assay significant change criteria is not applicable. And also, if you are not aware what is a initial shelf life spec, what is a release spec, there is a link in the I button. Please go ahead and check out that video. Now let's look at the regulatory requirement for the drug substance and the products intended to be stored at a refrigerator. Okay, so in this case, the long-term study would be in temperature 2 to 8. There is no humidity condition, and the minimum time requirement for the dosage submission would be 12 months. Now, for the accelerated, it would be 2560, and the minimum data that is required, that would be 6 months. Now, there are certain points which are very important here, and let's look at those. So, the first point is that if there is any significant change occur between the 3 to 6 months of accelerated testing, then the shelf life would be based on the real-time data. of long term. So let me explain you this point. So in general case, what happen is that whenever you submit a long term data of 12 month and there is no significant change happened in the accelerated testing, then the applicant can claim a shelf life of 24 months. So this is based on the fact that as my drug product is stable for 12 months and there is no significant change in the accelerated, it would be stable in 24 month also. So this is an extrapolation of data. But when there is a significant change occur in the accelerated between 3 to 6 months, this extrapolation the regulatory agencies don't accept. So they give you a proposed shelf life based on the real time data. That means if you are submitting a long term data of 12 months, you can claim a shelf life of 12 month only, not 24 month. I hope you understood this point. Now, how this extrapolation is done, that I am going to cover in my upcoming videos in detail. That is a separate video in together. Now, suppose if there is any significant change occur within the first 3 months, then in that case, a short-term excursion studies need to be submitted to the regulatory agency showing how your drug is behaving if there is any change outside the label, because now it is very much susceptible to change, right? And the final, if there is any change occur, a significant change occur in the accelerator, then there is no point in conducting the study up to 6 months. Okay, um, um, so you can stop if it is happen within the first 3 months. Now let's look at the regulatory requirement for drug substance as well as products intended to be stored at freezer. So in this case, only long-term studies is done, no accelerated, no intermediate. And the long term would be minus 20 plus minus 5, and the minimum data required that would be 12 months. Now, as there is no accelerated as well as intermediate, the shelf life would be based on the real-time data. So here also no extrapolation of long-term data. And as there is no accelerated again, short-term excursion studies have to be done by the applicant in either 2 to 8 or 25 plus minus 2. Again, there is no humidity condition here, only the temperature condition, and data need to be submitted to the agency showing the confidence that the drug product won't be susceptible to uh, sudden change in the temperature. And now, what would be the regulatory requirement for the drug product and substance which are stored below 20 degree? So this is the special case which needs to be treated by case by case basis. Although ICH is trying to harmonize the technical requirement across the globe, but still there are some differences available region to region. For example, US and Europe. Let's look at those. So the first point would be, if you are submitting your dossier to the FDA for the primary batches, the orientation has to be on the upright as well as on the inverted position for the liquid, solution, semi-solid and suspension. So out of these two orientation, one would be your worst case orientation and another would be your non-worst case orientation. In general, the inverted position is considered as a worst case orientation because in this case, your drug product is in contact with your cap, where in upright condition, it is not in contact with the cap, but it is not constant. It is depends upon the formulation you have. Uh, so for the primary batches, both of the orientation stability data you have to submit in case of US. But for the routine studies, only the worst case orientation is enough. But for the European Union, there is no such a recommendation given by EMA. And secondly, if your product contain any preservative, then for the one of the primary batches, the antimicrobial preservative effectiveness as well as the preservative content has to be tested in the stability studies and data has to be given to the regulatory authorities. Coming to the next point, the extraction and leachable studies are mandatory for US, but it is optional for EU. Extractable studies. It is not yet harmonized yet. There is no ICH guideline for it, because there is one guideline which is in draft step 1, and the concept paper, business plan, work plan is there in the website. If you go and you can find it. Coming to the next point, for the drug product, if the dilution studies or reconstitution studies is needed, then its data for the 3 primary batches has to be submitted to the regulatory agencies, and the photostability study or stress testing data for the drug product needs to be conducted on at least one primary batch. If you are not sure what is ICH step 1, what is primary batch, what is stress testing, I have made a detailed video on this for your reference. Please click on the I button for this, and also the link is given in the description. Please go ahead and check out that video. Now let's discuss a very interesting case here, that is the drug products in semi-permeable containers, stored in a semi-permeable container. Now it is a special case because of the container itself. So let's first understand what is a semi-permeable container. So semi-permeable containers are containers which allows the passage of solvent, especially water, from its outer surface, and it do not allows the passage of solute. It only allows the passage of solvent. Now it becomes very risk or area of concern when this kind of containers, they are stored in a environment or area which is having very low humidity, because when there is a difference in the humidity, this kind of water loss can happen. Now if I have to give you the examples of it, LDP pouches for LBP or LDP ampoules, bottles, vials, they're the example of it. And as this is a special case, there is a special regulatory requirement when your drug products it's stored in a semi-permeable container. So basically through the stability studies, you have to show that your containers, they are not having a significant amount of water loss, and also it is not having an impact on the other parameters. So let's look at the regulatory requirements. So if the condition you can see on the screen, long term, accelerated and intermediate. Now if you see the conditions very carefully, see in case of long term, instead of 25-60, now it is 25-40% relative humidity. Similarly for accelerated, the humidity is now instead of 75, it is not more than 25. So you can see it that the regulatory bodies, they want that the applicants show that in when the drug products they're stored in a lower humidity area, there is not much water loss. And as the water loss can happen here when you store in a lower humidity condition, a significant change in water loss, that is the 5% loss in the water content from its initial value, just on the basis of water loss in accelerated condition, we cannot say that we will be going through the intermediate. In this case, we also have to show that there is a water loss as well as there is some impact on the other parameters. Then only it will be an significant change, and it can trigger the intermediate storage condition study. And finally, when the container size is very small, 5% water loss can happen very easily. That is why when for the container which is having a content of 1 ml or less, water loss of 5% can be justified. So now if you do not have such a capacity or a set of equipments which can test your drug product at such a lower relative humidity like 40% RH or 35% RH or not more than 25% RH, in that case alternative approaches also can be used to show that your drug products is stable. For example, if you see the alternative approaches is that uh, let me show you the pointer. Yeah, so suppose you are going to test in 25% relative humidity, but you do not have that say equipment, so you can do at 60% relative humidity. But here the condition is whatever the water loss you are getting here, you have to multiply that with 1.9. Similarly, when you have to store your product in 40% but you are doing in 60% relative humidity, in that case you have to multiply with 1.5. Similarly for 65% and similarly for 75%. This is a criteria which is given in ICH. So now we are going to look at the stability commitment. Now this stability commitment is very important because during the submission of your dossier, you probably do not have a full set of your long-term stability data up to its shelf life. For example, suppose you have given a 12-month long-term data and there is no significant change at the accelerated storage condition, that then in that case you are claiming a shelf life of 24 months, but you have given a data up to 12 months only. In that case you have to commit to the regulatory agencies that after approval you are going to continue the stability studies up to 24 months, and after that you are going to give that set of data to the regulatory agencies. So this is the commitment you have to make to the regulatory agencies. And not only that, there is another one commitment also given that the first three production batches will be loaded onto the stability chamber for long term along with the accelerated studies, and those data also will be given to the regulatory agencies. And the stability study protocol for the commitment batches or the production batches as well as for the primary batches, that has to be same unless otherwise justified. So this is all about the ICH Q1 video. I have tried to cover almost everything here, but still if I have missed anything, please let me know in the comments so that I can cover this in the next one. And if you really like the video, please do subscribe, like and share with your friends. And see you on the next video. Bye. Take care.